Hello.
Yes, sir, you can start the session, sir.
Hello. Yeah, good. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Forum of Cardiac Anesthesia Bangalore chapter, IATA, I welcome Dr. Srinath, who is going to speak about lung ultrasound. It's going to be around 30 minutes of presentation, followed by 15 minutes of discussion. I welcome Dr. Srinath. Srinath is a consultant in Sunrise Hospital, Cochin. I welcome Srinath. Srinath, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the nice introduction, sir.
Yeah, please. You can start.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Good morning, everyone. And myself, Dr. Srinath, working as a consultant in Sunrise Hospital, Kochi. I would like to thank Dr. Muralidhar Kanchi for providing this opportunity. Today, I am going to talk about the basics of lung ultrasound. The main learning objectives of this presentation is to know about the technique and basic semiotics of lung ultrasound, and also to know about the illustrate this lung ultrasound as a diagnostic tool for acutely ill patient. The third point is to highlight the lung ultrasound as a monitoring tool in ICU as well as in the perioperative care. And finally, to know about the limitation and its future perspectives of the lung ultrasound. As we know, lung ultrasound basically used to visualize the lungs in the bedside or in the operation theater to diagnose or to treat some basic pathologies of lung. We know that physical examination has its own fallacies, like insufficient to diagnose the case properly. Other problems associated with the bedside chest X-ray is because of the limited accuracy and the exposure to the radiation. Though CT scan is better than ultrasound in many prospects, but it has its own inherent risk of transportation, irradiation, and also the cost involved in taking the CT scan. So based on these facts, ultrasound provides an easy method or easy mode to diagnose the lung condition with a low cost. So we know that point of care ultrasound is usually defined as an ultrasonography done by a clinician near the bedside in a real-time manner. So the main advantages is it uses the real-time dynamic images rather than interpreting the images provided by the radiologist, and it has a direct correlation with the patient's presenting signs and symptoms, which will be helpful in treating the patients, which is easily repeatable and more compact with higher quality and less expensive. More importantly, it doesn't involve any ionizing radiation. So we have to just know about the basic difference between the comprehensive versus point of care ultrasound. Comprehensive is usually done by the radiologist in a radiologist suite. It takes a long time. So clinician needs to incorporate the results based on the radiologist providing. So there will be a time consuming, and that will also lead to the information loss. But the point of care ultrasound is usually done by a clinician. Usually it is an intensivist or anesthetist or trained technician in the ICU or in the OT, which is immediately available. It will give the results which is pertinent to the condition, and it's a less time consuming. That's why point of care ultrasound is gaining popularity across the world. So why point of care ultrasound training is essential for anesthesiologists? The previous studies shows that anesthesiologists should not only use ultrasound only for the doing procedures like central venous insertion or arterial insertion, but it should be used as a diagnostic tool in the perioperative care. So we can see that point of care ultrasound affecting the clinical management at a rate of 76%, which is huge, and a new pathology detection is 31% in the perioperative care, which is commendable. So coming to the lung point of care ultrasound, we use the lung point of ultrasound for the three purposes. One is for procedural guidance, and the other is for diagnostic guidance, and third one is for the screening, as a screening tool. So for the procedural guidance, we usually use ultrasound to do thoracocentesis or aspiration of the pleural effusion, or taking sometimes biopsy under ultrasound guidance. It can be done either two methods, it by using the static method or dynamic method. Static is just placing a probe, finding the place where exact effusion or biopsy, that tumor or whichever biopsy we have to take, we have to identify the location and we have to take through the needle. Dynamic has we have to place a needle in the real-time manner. So always a dynamic has an edge over the static technique. Which can be approached again by in-plane technique or out-of-plane technique. I'm not going to detail of the how to do all those things. So coming to the diagnostic point of view, we can diagnose or rule out certain lung condition very quickly on the bedside. That's why lung ultrasound is gaining popularity across the various ICU setups. So basic lungs ultrasound signs like sliding sign, lung point, B lines are helpful in diagnosing various lung pathologies, which we will discuss in later. So, and finally, we can use the lung ultrasound as a screening tool. Currently, because of the COVID pandemic, this lung ultrasound utility has been increased across the globe, mainly because it is a non-ionizing and is easily available at the bedside. So we can diagnose the COVID-related conditions quickly, and also the ultrasound can be easily mobilized outside the hospital also to categorize the patient quickly, whether the patient needs an hospital admission or not. So hence it works well as a screening tool. Coming to the basics of an ultrasound machine. So I am going to talk very small aspects of the physics of ultrasound, which includes the basic ultrasound machine generates the sound waves by the piezoelectric crystals, as we know, by the transducer, which is reflected from the tissue or structure which we want to examine. The sound waves propagate through various mediums like tissues, air, blood, or bone. So the main propagation of the sound wave, ultrasound wave, is influenced by the frequency, amplitude, period, and wavelength and power of the waves. We know that frequency is a number of waves per second, and the amplitude is defined as the strength of the wave, power is defined as the energy of the wave, and wavelength is defined as the distance between the successive crest of a wave. These parameters involve and which will give us effective results. Usually the ultrasound machine works in the range of 1 to 20 megahertz, as we know. So our interpretation is based on the acoustic impedance of the tissue. What is acoustic impedance of a tissue? It is the product of tissue density and the propagation velocity of sound waves through the tissue. So the reflection is based on the acoustic impedance of the different tissues. So sound wave, whenever encounters a structure, the following things can happen. It may either reflect, depends on the acoustic impedance of the tissue. It may scatter if the target tissue is very small comparing with the wavelength of the ultrasound, then it will scatter. And third thing is the refraction. If it is passing through a medium, based on this, it may either deflect from the pathway of ultrasound by the tissues. Absorption, it is mainly because of the loss of energy as it passes through the tissues by converting into the heat energy. Attenuation is based on, usually it is again the loss of amplitude, which has a different coefficients, which like in lung, in aerated lung, it has a very high coefficient. So these kind of basic properties alters the sound waves to provide us the image for lung ultrasound. So coming to the fundamentals of lung ultrasound, we have to know that aerated lung parenchyma cannot be visualized directly by transthoracic ultrasonography. Ultrasonography, we cannot detect the lung directly as like what we are seeing in case of echocardiography. Basically, it is the artifacts which helps in diagnosing and treating the conditions, and sometimes the real tissue also helps in diagnosing and treating the condition. So the diagnosing based is the lung ultrasound basically works based on the principle of the ratio of the air and fluid. So whenever the ratio changes, the artifacts as well as the real images changes in the lung ultrasound, which will be helpful in detecting the pathology. The main peculiarity of lung ultrasound is made of both artifacts. Artifacts can be either a normal or it may be a pathological. And in case of real image, it's always a pathological. It's visible only in the absorption of air interposition. So lung ultrasound basically involves two modes. One is brightness mode, which we commonly call as B mode, or a motion mode, which is always known as M mode. M mode has a very few diagnosing conditions. It will be helpful in detecting pneumothorax, pleural effusion, and also it is little helpful in diaphragmatic assessment, which will be works for weaning the mechanically ventilated patients. So it is always essential to compare the findings on both sides of the thorax. Like we have to do examination first on one side, and we have to compare exactly on the opposite to confirm the finding. Also, you have to understand the basic ideas about what is freeze, what is depth, what is gain function in the ultrasound, which will be helpful in doing lung ultrasound. So these are the various probes available for doing lung ultrasound. So the first one is the sector probe, which has the frequency of 1 to 5 megahertz. Usually we have seen using this probe for echocardiography. The second one is a convex probe, which has a little lower frequency of around 2 to 5 megahertz, which will be helpful in diagnosing deep lung pathologies, and it will also helpful in assessing intra-abdominal conditions. Linear probe is specifically having the high frequency, so it will be very helpful in assessing the superficial structures, especially pleura. So how we are doing lung ultrasound? It has been doing in various methods. One is, if we are receiving a patient in an emergency, we have to go through by blue points, which I will discuss later. If we are doing in a non-emergency conditions, then we can go for a 12 zone method or a comprehensive method, which involves 12 zones. The 12 zones we can see into, we can get it by, we can see that anterior and posterior axillary line divide the entire hemithorax into 3 compartments, anterior and lateral and posterior, which has been further divided into upper and lower. Total 6 zones in one side and 6 zones on the other side. Total 12 zones involves a comprehensive ultrasound of the lung. The other way of doing the ultrasound little bit quickly is doing the 4-zone method, which usually involves in a patient where doing posterior is difficult, especially in the ICU, a long staying patient where doing posterior assessment is very difficult. So we can see it's divided into 4 zones as seen in the picture based on the anterior and posterior axillary line. So ultrasound can be done in 2 ways. Either you can place the probe perpendicular to the skin and it is in the horizontal longitudinal plane, or you can put in a transverse plane, transverse scan. Longitudinal involves, we can see the multiple ribs in the same image as we shown in the top figure, where you can see multiple ribs can be visualized and the space of between the ribs also visualized clearly. So this way of doing lung ultrasound is very much helpful in diagnosing condition, and especially more advantageous in patients where the subcutaneous tissue is large, as like in bariatric patients or patients who have subcutaneous emphysema. Transverse scan also doing, but it has a very limited advantage in this condition. So basically, lung ultrasound, how it helpful in diagnosing lung pathologies, it is based on these 3 parameters. Lung ultrasound produces artifacts based on the pleural line. Also it has other artifacts which is created below the pleural line by A line, B line and E line, and real images, which is because loss of aeration in the lung tissue. We can see the basically the pleural line causes these kind of the pleural line results in these kind of signs like bat sign, lung sliding, seashore sign, lung pulse, stratosphere sign and lung point. Artifacts leads to gives information about the A lines, B lines and E lines. And the real images which we can see in the ultrasound images, usually it's a pleural effusion and consolidation. So we can see what is a bat sign. Bat sign is, we can see if you are placing a longitudinal scan, or if you are scanning the thorax in the longitudinal way, we can see the 2 ribs, as which we can see in the images as shadows. So in this between the shadows, we can see there is a small horizontal line between the 2 ribs, which is almost 0.5 centimeter below the ribs. So this mimics like a bat. So this is called bat sign, which is usually a normal phenomena in lung, and it will be helpful in diagnosing various pathologies. The space between the 2 ribs, shadows and the pleural line and the bottom of the scan, usually what we call it as a Merlin space. So these terminologies are important. Merlin space is the space between the 2 ribs and pleural line and the bottom of the screen. Bat sign is a normal sign which we can see because of the horizontal pleural line just 0.5 centimeter below the 2 ribs. So if you are placing the lung ultrasound, if you are placing the transducer in a normal patient, we can see the number of horizontal lines are repeated at every intervals at equidistance. These are called A lines. A lines are the normal lines which is commonly seen in the normal lung. It is actually a reverberation effect of the pleural surface with the transducer. We can see at the equidistance. It's a normal phenomena. If we are placing the M mode across the same point, we can see what we can say is a sea and sand sign, or also known as seashore sign. The arrow mark indicates the pleural line. The above the pleural line we have the soft tissue which has been interpreted here. It's a straight lines. These straight lines involve a skin and subcutaneous tissue. This is the pleural surface. Below the lung we can see the granularity of the echogenic area. This is due to the normal lung. Similar, we can see here the same thing. The pleural lines are horizontal artificial repetitions at equidistance. We can see at every point. We can use it through the convex probe, but it is little bit curvilinear type. Otherwise, it is at the same equidistance. This is a normal A lines in a normal line. So what is lung sliding? Lung sliding is also a common phenomena or common sign we can see in a normal lung. Lung sliding is the sliding of the visceral pleura below the parietal pleura. We can see the motion. This is basically the movement related due to the inspiration and expiration. These are the two ribs. The lung sliding happens just below the parietal pleura. This will be very helpful in diagnosing pathology, especially like pneumothorax, where the lung sliding is entirely absent. That is a specific sign which will be helpful in diagnosing the condition. So this is what I am going to say. What is this? This is the same point where we are doing the M mode. If the lung sliding is absent, so we cannot able to differentiate between the lung area, the below the lung area and above the pleural line. So it's very difficult. So it looks like a stratosphere sign, which is also known as barcode sign. We can see the abolished lung slide, which I will show in the next slide, with A lines are clearly visible. Okay, this is in B mode. This is in M mode. This is a lung point. Lung point is the exact point where the normal lung is there, and above that there is a pneumothorax lung is there. The meeting point is called the lung point. So this is the video which shows clearly lung ultrasound in pneumothorax. We can see the sliding is entirely absent. Lung sliding is not present. So if you are putting the same time, we are putting the M mode, we can see a barcode sign or also known as stratosphere sign. Again, how to find a lung point in a pneumothorax using ultrasound? If you are placing at the lung, if you are scanning from above to below, and if you are able to identify this kind of tongue-like projections coming into the non-ventilated part of the lung, where the lung sliding is entirely absent, other part as a lung sliding is present. It is a meeting point. So this is the very important sign which will give 100% specific to pneumothorax. It should be present to diagnose the pneumothorax. If this lung point is present below the posterior axillary line or mid axillary line, we can say the pneumothorax is huge. So that in a supine position. So which needs immediate intervention. So we have to be very specific. So this is a B mode, which shows tongue-like protrusion of a normal lung with absent lung sliding. Again, if you do the same at the same point, if you are putting the M mode, we can see the seashore sign is being converted to the barcode sign. So we can see here clearly the loss of lung sliding. This will change the M pattern also. So next important thing we have to diagnose using ultrasound is a pulmonary edema. It's very common in ICU patient as well as in the emergency setup. So pulmonary edema can be visualized using the presence of B line. So what is B line? A B line is an artifact with the following 7 criteria. Which are this? They are comet tail appearance arising from the pleural line. Second, third is moving with lung sliding. It's a well-defined line from top to bottom of the screen, hyperechoic, and it should erase the A lines, which we are commonly seeing in the normal lung. If these 7 criteria are present, then it is called B line. In a normal patient, B lines are very few, usually 1 or 2 between the 2 ribs. You can say. So when it is a pathological, if it is involving more than 3 B lines, we call it as a pathology. So what is lung rockets? Is a number of B lines more than 3, then we can call it as a lung rockets. What is septal rockets? Septal rockets the same B lines, but it is a more number of B lines are present with a thickened more number of B lines with less space along with the thickened subpleural we can see the thickened part here in the B diagram. We can see here the thickened pleural part. So this is called septal rockets. Another one line which is almost similar to B line, which is called E line. These vertical lines arises from the subcutaneous tissue rather than from the pleura. So, which is usually seen in the subcutaneous emphysema. The main criteria is it is not following the above criteria of B lines. E lines are small lines. We can see here the B lines in a pulmonary edema where this is a pleura. We can see multiple fomentile-like appearance from the pleural surface. Multiple B lines are present till the edge of the screen. What is E line? Again, which I told already, these are lines which are not a complete like a pleural line from top to bottom. It is a small lines which the absence of pleura, it is arising from the subcutaneous tissue. This is important for the diagnosis of subcutaneous emphysema. Although we see very less common in ICU setup, it's very common in trauma and in emergency setups. Then coming to the pleural effusion, how we can see pleural effusion using lung ultrasound. These are the two signs which will be helpful in diagnosing the pleural effusion. Usually pleural effusion is collection of blood or sometimes a fluid transudate or exudate, which will cause a hypoechoic resonance from the lung ultrasound waves. So which will give us a quad sign. Quad sign we can see in the 2D motion or B modes. What is quad sign? Quad sign is formed because of the parallel image formation with a this visceral pleura becomes parallel with the parietal pleura, and between the two ribs we can see it's a space created between the two pleura, which we can see as a quad sign because it mimics like a quadrangular structure. What is sinusoid sign? The same thing we can see at the same point if we are putting a probe and we can see the patient is taking inspiration. That excursion will lead to the movement of visceral pleura as a sinusoidal pattern. As we see here in the next image, side image, the lung line moves towards the pleural line, away from pleural line during expiration. So this is called sinusoidal pattern, also known as sinusoid sign. So when we do a safe tapping, so for tapping a pleural effusion, there is a criteria, at least minimum 15 millimeter is required between the space between the pleural and visceral surface. That is the ideal criteria to do a safe tapping, otherwise lung injury can happen. In supine position, using a transverse scan, if the interpleural distance between the visceral and parietal, if it is more than 5 centimeter, definitely the effusion is moderate to severe, around 500 ml or more. We can say roughly each centimeter of pleural distance corresponds to 200 ml of fluid. It's an approximate estimation, it's not accurate one. So we can clearly, if it's more than 5 centimeter, we can go ahead with aspiration, or if the effusion is very large, we can put the chest tube. Coming to the consolidation part, how we will diagnose the consolidation using lung ultrasound, it is based specifically on some few criteria like C line. C lines it's not in proper nomenclature. It's a consolidation. It's similar to B lines only, but it's not exact terminology is not clear. Definitely, it's a hypoechoic or hyperechoic just below the subpleura. Main important thing is shred sign. Shred sign is usually seen in non-translobular consolidation. In that we can see that it is a serrated border is present inside the lung with a normal aeration with the consolidated part. The arrow indicates the border. So this is particularly helpful in diagnosing non-translobular consolidation. For a translobular consolidation, it is the entire lung is consolidated in such a way it can exactly mimic like a normal abdominal organ tissue. For example, here we can see the lung tissue has been consolidated completely. We can see the S is a spleen. So we can see both the tissues are almost like same. So the lung has lost its normal texture and it becomes the texture which is similar to the spleen. So this is called quasi-specific tissue-like sign, which is helpful in diagnosing translobular consolidation. So how this lung ultrasound changes in a diseased lung? Usually, for example, our common scenario nowadays, it's a COVID. As we see, first initially the patient may have a BA profile. As the patient, the lung damage starts, then gradually the B lines started coming. Then the B lines become increasing more and more and coalescent to form a white interstitial edema or alveolar edema. And finally, ultimately leads to the C profile or consolidation profile where the lung is completely damaged and becomes like a tissue. So this is the way how the lungs are changing in a diseased patients. As we see, initially the air accumulated, the air presence in the lung is 100%. As the damage occurs because of disease, the air is losing and the fluid is accumulating. So that's why the pattern change we can observe in the lung ultrasound. So what it's a simple criteria of B line less than 7 millimeter, more than 7 millimeter apart, it is called interstitial edema. If the B lines is less than 3 millimeter apart and coalescent, it's a alveolar edema. So I'm going to just give quick ideas. What is bad sign? Bad sign is a normal hyperechoic line between the two ribs, which is 0.5 centimeter. It is identification of pleura. What is lung sliding? It is the synchronous movement of pleura with tidal ventilation. It is very helpful in ruling out pneumothorax. If it is absent, definitely it is a pneumothorax. So what is C-Schussen? As we know, it's a movement of pleural line synchronous with the tidal ventilation. Another one important thing we have to know is lung pulse. What is lung pulse? The pleural line usually synchronized with heartbeat rather than with the ventilation. This is also the important sign. So if it is absent, again we can confirm it's a pneumothorax, or it is a, if the location is particular segment is the particular region is involved, then that particular bronchus is obstructed. The stratosphere sign is already discussed. Lung point also I have already discussed. So again, the artifacts we can say, the first one is A line, which I have said, the horizontal hyperechoic line. If the gas is more, like it's a normal lung, we can see a normal aeration. Rules of the pneumothorax. If A line is present without lung sliding, but lung pulse is there, it is specific for regional hypoventilation. It's not a full hypoventilation, it's a regional hypoventilation. If there is A line, but no lung sliding, no lung pulse, then definitely it's a pneumothorax. Coming to the B line, again we can see 2 per scan is a normal one. If it is increased, it tells about that fluid is increasing in the lung. Based on that pattern, we can say it's a lung rocket or septal rocket. If it is a focal particular to the one region, then it is called, it may be due to the pneumonia, atelectasis, lung contusion, or pulmonary embolism. If it is a diffuse involving the bilateral region, then we have to see whether the B lines are homogeneous in distribution. That's a similar pattern is available in both sides. Then it is due to the cardiogenic edema. So we have to diagnose the cardiac condition which is causing this pulmonary edema. If the B lines are non-homogeneous distribution with the pleura causing a thickened and its irregularities are present with consolidation, then we have to think about non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, which may be due to the ARDS. Again, if there is a homogeneous pattern is observed, but pleural thickening also irregular, but there is a possibility that can be due to the some other parenchymal disease, which is very difficult with a lung ultrasound alone. It needs further investigations. So another important aspect of B line is nowadays it is a scoring system has come. The scoring system helps in assessing the lung condition in ICU patients, whether the patient is on improving trend or downtrend. So this will help in detecting whether our whatever management we are giving is adequate or not, and also helpful in predicting the ARDS mortality. Already I have told about the pleural effusion, which how we can do the tapping, all those things. So only main thing is if the hypoechoic space between the interpleura is we can see. If it is the texture is homogeneous or heterogeneous loculated, will give us some other additional information. If it's a homogeneous, it is mostly it's a collected blood or translate caused by the pneumonia. So where the chest tube insertion will not be a much big problem. But if it is a septated, then tapping or putting a chest tube may be little bit difficult. And consolidation, I have already discussed about the shred sign and quasi-specific tissue-like sign. Another important aspect which I want to tell you is the air bronchogram. Air bronchogram is also a specific for consolidation C profile. It is usually because of the air trapped within the consolidation, because the bronchus is open with the air inside. So that will cause the artifact which we can see in the lung ultrasound. If it is completely absent, then it means the consolidation part has no air inside, completely no air. So if it is a static, it is not moving, but the air bronchogram is visible as like here in the down picture we can see. Then if it's a static, then we can think of it as an atelectasis, either due to the post surgery, especially in cardiac like that. If it is a dynamic, like it is opening and closing, bronchus are present, then we can clearly rules out the atelectasis. So main problem with this consolidation part is whether we are able to differentiate whether it's atelectasis or pneumonia lies basically based on the air bronchograms interpretations. If it's a linear aberrant as seen in this picture, top picture, then it is usually because of ventilator associated pneumonia. So if the patient is coming with acute dyspnea to the emergency setup, we have to do ultrasound quickly. So usual comprehensive examination involves at least 15 minutes, but we can do it up to within 8 minutes or 5 minutes by using the blue points. What is this blue point? Blue point is the 3 important points where we can diagnose most of the pathologies which requires urgent interventions. So how we can identify the blue point? By placing our upper hand, clinician hand, just below the inferior border of clavicle, and second lower hand we have to overlap the first hand's thumb. So we have to place in the one side of the chest, especially the right side, to avoid the heart interference. The middle of the upper blue point is the middle of the upper hand at the root of middle and ring finger. Lower blue point is the middle of the lower hand at the root of middle and ring finger. These are the upper and lower blue point. The third point is called Plapp's point, which is the horizontal continuation of the lower blue point. We can see as a dotted line behind the posterior axillary line. As much as possible we have to trace, that is in the patient is in supine position. So these 3 points are helpful in understanding or diagnosing the conditions quickly, especially pneumothorax, effusion and consolidation. These 3 points. That below the lowermost the line just below the lower hand, that is called phrenic line. The phrenic line as shown in the figure, it is pointed by the right hand, the second figure. The phrenic point is helpful in assessing the diaphragm condition basically. So what is the blue protocol? If a patient is coming with dyspnea, if we are having an ultrasound, we have to quickly diagnose the condition. So first we have to see the basic whether lung sliding is there or not. So lung sliding, if it is there, then we have to see whether A profile is there or B profile. What is A profile? A profile is the lung sliding along with the presence of A lines. If it is A lines are there, then we have to do a venous examination. Venous Doppler we have to see to rule out any thrombus inside. If any thrombus we are having or suspicion we are having, then there is the dyspnea is commonly due to the pulmonary embolism. If veins are free and A lines are present, then we have to look at the Plapp's point whether any consolidation is present or not. If there is no consolidation, then pneumonia is ruled out. Then we have to think if there is no pneumonia, then we have to consider whether it is due to COPD or asthma. Sometimes these also further diagnosed based on the air bronchogram. If the lung sliding is present and B profile is present rather than A profile, what is B profile? B profile is presence of B line erasing the A lines. It is due to the pulmonary edema. As I already discussed, the pulmonary edema can be due to cardiogenic or non-cardiogenic, depends on the homogeneous or heterogeneous pattern with the subpleural thickening are there or not. So based on that, we can find whether pulmonary edema is there or not. If lung sliding is absent on lung ultrasound, then that is called dash profiles. Dash profiles means lung sliding is absent. B dash profile means B profile which are not having lung sliding. A dash means A profile which is not having lung sliding. B dash profile is commonly seen in pneumonia. Then if A dash profile is seen, then we have to see the lung point is there. The lung point is a very specific for diagnosing the pneumothorax. So if A dash profile is present with lung point, then it is called pneumothorax. Without lung point, we need further investigation. Why? Sometimes lung point may not be present, but because of regional obstruction like mucus plug something is there, then lung sliding may be absent because of lack of inspiration and expiration of the particular bronchus. So we have to do bronchoscopy to rule out the other condition. If both A, B profile are present or C profile, but we are not able to pinpoint, then we have to think of pneumonia also. Although this protocol is given for quick diagnosing the condition in emergency, it's not 100% accurate. As shown in the literature, it is almost like 90%. This blue protocol is especially helpful in trauma, neonates, and in ARDS patients. So there are variations in the sensitivity and specificity for each condition, which I am showing here. We can see the pneumothorax as a very specific here. If you are having a lung point and the absence lung sliding. Similarly, embolism can be diagnosed as accurate as possible with 99% accuracy if the veins are free if the veins are having thrombus with the A profile. The other pulmonary edema and pneumonia having little bit lower specificity, but having appreciable sensitivity. Then the third one, as the second one important is the false protocol. The false protocol usually if a blue protocol applies for the acute respiratory dyspnea or whatever acute respiratory condition causing dyspnea. False protocol is involved in the acute circulatory collapse. If the patient is coming to the hospital in the emergency department with acute circulatory failure, we have to use the basic ultrasound. Basic ultrasound, what we are usually the transducer which will be helpful in diagnosing all the condition is a microconvex probe. The microconvex probe is a small probe with the footprint of 1 to 2 centimeter with the length of 8 centimeter, which will be fitting exactly between the two ribs that will diagnose the condition quickly. So first we have to do the simple echocardiography focus. Exactly what we require is we have to see the heart condition, whether any effusion is there or not, whether right ventricular strain is there or not. These two first we have to see. If there is no effusion, then we can clearly say pericardial effusion is ruled out. Then we have to do the lung ultrasound. First we have to do the cardiac, basically rule out the effusion, then lung ultrasound, then you follow the blue protocol. We can rule out the pneumothorax and pulmonary embolism. After ruling out all these things, then we have to see in the lung whether B profile is there or not. So if B profile is there, then the circulatory collapse can be due to the cardiogenic shock. So then we have to follow, if there is no B lines, then we can clearly say there is no cardiogenic shock, there is no cardiogenic pulmonary edema. So then if the A profile we can see in the lung. If A profile is there, then we have to give fluid. If the fluid improves the clinical condition, then we can think the circulatory collapse is mainly because of hypovolemic shock. If after giving the fluid also, if the clinical improvement is not significantly moving, rather in the lung ultrasound we can see a B profile, then we have to think of distributive shock or also known as septic shock. So the circulatory collapse can be identified using the lung ultrasound, using the FAST protocol by ruling out one by one all the condition. Finally, whether we have to know whether the condition is caused by the cardiogenic cause or because of hypovolemic cause or because of the septic cause. So based on this, we will treat the patient. So this is a literature which shows the consolidation and interstitial syndrome, the sensitivity and specificity is almost parallel with the CT scan. That's why nowadays CT scan has been almost we are avoiding by using the lung ultrasound, especially in COVID pandemic where this is very helpful. So another important aspect of lung ultrasound is the quantification of lung aeration. How much lung is aerated during the mechanical long-standing patients who are in the ICU, whether the lung is improving or not, we don't know. So we have to score it accordingly. Score 0 is the normal pattern, normal A profile patient with a normal aeration. Score 1 is the B profile patient with a specific discrete B lines are present. Score 2 is a coalescent with thickened pleura we can see. Score 3 is a consolidated lung. So based on the scoring, we have to do for the 12 zone comprehensive examination. So total score involves 36. 36 means the lung, both the lungs are completely damaged, so which may require the ECMO support or something like that. So we have to see if the score is less than 13, we can clearly say the patient can be extubatable in the ICU. If the score is more than 17, there is a high possibility for post-extubation distress and for the re-intubation. There is a gray zone between the 13 to 17. So this will give a rough idea about when to extubate the patient in mechanically ventilated patients in ICU. Also, the ultrasonography helps in the assessment of lung recruitment maneuvers. We can see once we check the lung aeration, then we have to see whether lung is collapsed or not in the lung ultrasound. If it is collapsed, as we can see in the consolidation profile with the static air bronchogram, if it is there, then we have to check whether the vitals are stable for the patient. If yes, then we have to look for the lung recruitment, how it works and how it opens up the alveoli. By gradually increasing the PEEP and recruitment in the lung, we can see that over the period of time that increasing in the pressure will open up the more and more alveoli, and we can see from the score will decrease from 3 to 1 or 0 sometime. So once it becomes normal, again if you have to decrease and see at what point the lung is again going into the C profile, then we that just 2 millimeters of mercury we have to keep the PEEP above that closing point. The opening and closing pressure of the alveoli is very important to prevent the atelectasis. So you have to keep little bit higher PEEP at above the closing pressure. So this will be helpful in identifying exactly at what PEEP we can keep the patient to maintain the to prevent the lung collapse. So this is how lung ultrasound helps in lung recruitment maneuver. We can also see the lung ultrasound is very helpful in predicting the aeration in a prone patients also. We can see the ROC curve which shows with the AUC of 0.85, we can clearly predict the lung ultrasound is able to predict the aeration even in the prone patients. Usually prone patients we are considering if the ultrasonographic the recruitment maneuvers, if it is not responding, then usually we consider as a non-responders for recruitment maneuver. So in this kind of patient, we will go for prone. Even in prone position also, we can see that it is helpful in diagnosing whether the condition is improving or not. So other study shows again the same whether lung ultrasound is able to recruit or not. So which shows even with antibiotic, if you are treating regularly in the ICU and giving a proper antibiotic based on the culture and sensitivity, we can see that alveoli getting opening up, which can be very well appreciated using ultrasound. The other important thing which we can use ultrasound for diagnosing lung condition, which will be helpful in respiratory distress in patients with acute dyspnea, is based on diaphragm ultrasound. Diaphragm, as I have already told, that we can put the probe across the phrenic line in the subcostal area using the microconvex probe or echo probe. We can see the movement of diaphragm, like its excursion of diaphragm during inspiration and expiration. So this will guide you rough idea about when to extubate, when to not extubate a patient. Usually the thickness of the diaphragm we can measure at both inspiration and expiration. Usually it is very thickened at inspiration and less thickening at expiration. So if the ratio of the thickening is normal ranges between 30 to 96%. If it is less than 30%, then we can clearly say the patient is not an ideal candidate for extubation. So extubation is successful if the thickening fraction is more than 30%. This you have to keep in mind while we are doing lung ultrasound. Another important aspect of lung ultrasound is airway management. So what are the useful things that we can do is, first we can identify the trachea and we can confirm the endotracheal intubation is there or not. How we can do? By placing the lung ultrasound probe just above the suprasternal notch, we can see the transverse ring. The transverse rings are due to the normal tracheal rings, which we can appreciate in the lung in the ultrasound. This is hyperechoic curvilinear structure with comatose artifact shadowing as shown in the picture. So if you are putting a tube inside the trachea, this will be getting more, and which will be moving up, and if you are moving the tracheal tube up and down, we can see the motion in the lung ultrasound also, But if you have put the tube inside the esophagus, then we can see a double traction, which I have shown here in the next image. We can see a double track, which is because of the intubation into the esophagus. So this will be helpful in prediction of confirmation of ET, and also helpful in whether the lung, if we need a single lung ventilation, again lung ultrasound plays a crucial role, and airway assessment. Some salient features of this COVID findings in lung ultrasound is thickening of pleural line along with pleural line irregularity. B lines are present, either it may be a multifocal or confluent. Consolidation. Appearance of A lines in a COVID infected patient usually shows the recovery phase. Sometimes effusions are present, but it's not very significant one. So main limitations of the lung ultrasound are inter-observer variability. It varies with whoever the clinician, but it can be avoided if you are doing it regularly, and if you are experienced after 25 to 30 patients, then the inter-observer variability becomes limited, and it will be very difficult to detect the deep lesions like tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, and histiocytosis kind of condition. We should not treat directly based on the image. We should also understand the clinical nature of the patient, and clinical things whichever helpful has to be correlated before going for management. If you are not able to diagnose a condition quickly, then you have to call for help and avoid errors. Finally, we have to come to know how we have to disinfect. Usually it is a surface if you are using ultrasound probe for a non-break-on skin, then low level disinfection is sufficient. Low level disinfection includes chlorine-based products, phenolic ammonium compounds, or alcohol with 70%. If it is high level infection is required if the patient has the skin has been broken, or if we are doing tapping, then we need a high level disinfection. So finally, the future perspectives include the B-line scoring system now has been changed into the automated way. Artificial intelligence nowadays plays a crucial role in various fields. Similarly, our field also having these changes. Nowadays, B-lines can be scored using artificial intelligence based assessment. So which will predict the extravascular lung volume in lung water. So this will give a very quick idea rather than doing taking time by a clinician. So over a period of time, this will be coming up in various setups that will be helpful in diagnosing quickly. And nowadays, another important thing is handheld ultrasound devices has come quickly across the globe. This handheld device is very helpful, again assessing the condition quickly. We have did a study last year in Narayana, which shows a very good correlation of the handheld ultrasound with a normal conventional ultrasound. And health, it will be very useful in conditions, especially outside the hospital, like screening COVID patients, etc. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Srinath.
Thank you.
This was a very good and very informative presentation. Though the lung ultrasound doesn't have much role in the theater, but definitely it has got a very good role in the ICU, especially with the pneumothorax, pulmonary edema, surgical emphysema, pleural effusion, and consolidation. Thank you very much, Srinath.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, it's open for a discussion. Any of our have any doubts you can clear with Dr. Srinath. Hello. Hello. Can you audible to the audience? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible to the audience, sir.
Yeah. Madhwaraj, you have any doubt?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am. You can put your question.
Okay. It was a very nice presentation. Dr. Murlidhar is not there today.
No, ma'am. Unfortunately, sir is traveling.
Okay, I'm Dr. Sanjeevani Inamdar. It was a wonderful presentation, and I'm doing it every day in my clinic. Dr. Srinath, I have one question. Are you able to hear me, Dr. Srinath?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
See, one day we had a patient who was postpartum around 3 weeks after delivery, and she was breathless due to her echo was normal, no cardiomyopathy or anything of that sort, but she was unable to breathe when she used to lie down. And when I looked at her, her abdominal breathing was absolutely absent.
Okay.
So probably when I didn't do her lung ultrasound, but I just want, because she didn't agree for that, but I just wanted to know, is there any condition like diaphragmatic weakness or anything like that after delivery? Because obviously she must be having some diaphragmatic pathology.
We can assess it using the lung ultrasound. But it needs other clinical parameters. Suddenly, if she is developing on table or
no, not on table. She gradually developed it. Then she started realizing it little later, after 10 or 15 days. And when she used to lie down, she is feeling breathless, because obviously her abdominal organs must be pushing the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And then that is why she is not able to move her diaphragm at all.
Yeah. That we can.
So when I did some movement of diaphragm, I did see with my echo probe, which is the usual probe of 2.5. I did see some thinning of diaphragm and less movement, but can you just elaborate something on how to see diaphragmatic movement, and is there any pathology after delivery, so that and what is the likely, I mean, how to proceed with such patients?
If you are suspecting a diaphragmatic weakness, we have to see whether we have to see the excursion of the diaphragm, especially during inspiration and expiration, by putting a M mode by using the same echocardiographic probe.
Okay.
Then if the thickening is significantly less, if the thickening is not happening during inspiration, then if they are having a suspicion of diaphragmatic weakness, it can be due to any of the cause. So the next, usually what we do in the cardiac is, if we are having in cardiac patients, if we are doing a surgery, their phrenic nerve damage is a very common phenomena. So in that condition,
she was operated for cesarean, but I don't know cesarean would go. I mean,
no,
would
I don't think
damage
for a phrenic
phrenics.
nerve. Then
And
we have
it was bilateral. It was bilateral.
Yeah. Then we have to go for fluoroscopy, give us a rough idea or even better idea than ultrasound whether really the diaphragmatic palsy is there or not.
Okay, that is a good idea. I will certainly advise her fluoroscopy.
Yeah.
It was very surprising. I have seen it for the first time and heard it first time in my life, that she is not able, and her heart is absolutely normal.
Oh.
Mhm.
Good morning. This is Dr. Ratan Gupta. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yeah, just to add a point, you are mentioning about the diaphragmatic excursion. Just to specify, in case you are trying to wean a postoperative patient, we always check the diaphragmatic excursion. And if it is less than 1 centimeter, there is a good chance that you might fail. And especially the patients I take care is postoperative cardiac surgery patients. I specifically look because we have, as you mentioned, a lot of patients who have phrenic nerve palsy. So this helps. If the excursion is less than 1 centimeter, it helps you in diagnosing diaphragmatic palsy. And you may get bias, especially if you're using pressure support, because then even if the diaphragm is not working well, you still will have excursion. So you'll have to take off the pressure support to see the excursion.
Yeah, that's a nice information, sir. Yeah.
Good morning,
sir. There is one
good morning, sir.
Question from the attendees. Could you check, sir, please?
Good morning, sir. Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
So good morning, sir. It's a nice presentation. So this one is how to assess the. Can you assess the quantity of the pleural effusions, and what is the indication for aspiration of what amount for aspiration?
Yeah, that's I have discussed the slide. So usually, if the interpleural distance is more than 15 millimeter, then we have to think for tapping. So tapping can be done using a needle. So that for a safe tapping, we need at least 15 mm between the parietal pleura and visceral pleura, basically the space between the two pleurals, between the two pleura. If it is a moderate effusion, if it's more than 500 ml, we can diagnose it by placing the probe which shows 5 centimeter distance between the two pleura, parietal
5 centimeter.
Okay. That is a 500 ml approximately. Other thing is, if it is more than 5, for each 1 centimeter, there is an increase in 200 ml of the fluid. So it's a rough idea. So based on that, we can see if it's a more than 500 ml, better to put a tube rather than going for aspiration, especially in the perioperative care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Any attendees having any questions or any doubt?
No questions?
Manjunath, sir.
Hello, sir. Sir, good morning, sir. It's a nice presentation. Sir, can you just repeat once the positions of the probes sir, to detect effusion? Clinically, we are facing a bit problems sir, to identify the effusion.
So we can do it usually in a supine patient. Usually the dependent part is the posterior region. So the Plapp's point is the area where we can see the effusion quickly, because if you are if a patient is in a sitting position, then it's very easy to do by doing it, putting the probe in sitting position, we can easily detect. But are in a semi-recumbent position. For a supine position, Plapp's point is the exact location where we can diagnose the effusion quickly and do tapping also based on the location.
Okay, sir.
Plapp's point, you understand, basically it is the extension of the lower blue point behind the posterior axillary line with the hand just above the head. So just you are extending the rib space, so it will give us a clear space between the two ribs, so where you can put the needle using the dynamic motion of the lung.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Srinath.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, Rajiv, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinath, sir. Thank you, Manjunath, sir. And thank you all the attendees. I would like to inform next Sunday we will be having again Sunday TE classes, and which will be taken by Dr. Manjula Sarkar ma'am. Updated schedule will be communicated via the WhatsApp group. Requesting you, please join this session. Thank you. Happy Sunday to all.
Thank you.